L. Ron Hubbard's The Dynamics of Life introduces one of Scientology's foundational concepts, the 8 dynamics, which represent progressively broader spheres of existence and survival. These range from the first dynamic, the self, to the 8th dynamic, infinity, often equated with God or spirituality. Hubbard frames this model as an all-encompassing explanation of human motivation and purpose, claiming that individuals must balance and fulfill all 8 dynamics to achieve personal and spiritual freedom. However, Hubbard's system borrows heavily from earlier philosophical and psychological ideas, repackages them as universal truths, and distorts them to align with Scientology's agenda. The framework is riddled with gaps and abstract claims, particularly at the higher dynamics, while the lower ones ultimately funnel focus and loyalty toward Scientology itself, reducing its purported universality to a thinly veiled tool of control. The concept of the 8 dynamics is not as original as Hubbard presents it. At its core, the idea of progressively broader levels of existence is rooted in philosophical traditions that predate Hubbard by centuries. For example, Aristotle's concept of telos, the purpose or end goal of a thing, focused on the interconnectedness of individual, societal, and cosmic purposes, much like the dynamics attempt to bridge personal and universal survival. Similarly, Maslow's Hierarchy of Needs, published in 1943, 7 years before Hubbard's first forays into Dianetics, reflects a similar structure, starting with basic individual survival needs and culminating in self-actualization, a broader concern for humanity and transcendence. What differentiates Hubbard's model is the addition of a spiritual and abstract 8th dynamic, which allows him to frame Scientology as the only path to mastering these levels of existence. This is where Hubbard departs from his influences. His model is less about genuine self-realization and more about steering individuals into Scientology under the guise of universal self-help. The 7th and 8th dynamics are especially abstract, to the point of being essentially meaningless without the context of Scientology. The 7th dynamic, spirituality, and the 8th dynamic, infinity or God, are defined so vaguely that they resist practical application. For instance, Hubbard writes, "The 7th dynamic is the urge toward existence as spiritual beings, or the urge for life itself to survive, while the 8th dynamic is described as the supreme being or infinity." These descriptions are so open-ended that they provide no actionable guidance, instead creating a sense of mystery that only Scientology claims to resolve. The absence of detail or practical advice here is not accidental. By keeping the higher dynamics abstract, Hubbard ensures that individuals feel there is always more to learn or achieve through Scientology, reinforcing dependency on the organization to unlock these profound but ill-defined levels of existence. The lower dynamics, by contrast, are more relatable but still problematic in their execution. For example, the 2nd dynamic is defined as the urge toward survival through sex or procreation. While this seems straightforward, Hubbard narrows its focus to physical reproduction, ignoring the psychological and emotional dimensions of relationships. In doing so, he reduces the complexity of human connection to a transactional, survival-based framework, stripping it of its richness. The 3rd dynamic, groups, is similarly shallow, but serves a more transparent purpose, promoting allegiance to Scientology as the ultimate group. Hubbard explicitly frames groups as essential for survival, but in practice, the group is always subjugated to the larger goal of forwarding Scientology. This is made clear in passages such as, "A 3rd dynamic group has value only to the degree it aligns with and forwards the greater dynamics." By positioning Scientology as the only group that fulfills the higher dynamics, Hubbard implicitly demands that followers prioritize the church over all other affiliations, including family, community, and workplace groups. What makes the dynamics of life particularly insidious is how it subjugates the first dynamic, the self, to the broader framework, particularly the 3rd dynamic, groups Scientology, and the 8th dynamic, infinity God. While the book ostensibly promotes individual survival, it subtly undermines personal autonomy by framing loyalty to Scientology as essential for achieving balance across all dynamics. Hubbard states, "A being cannot fully survive on the first dynamic without simultaneously supporting the other dynamics." This vague assertion creates a system in which personal goals and identity are continually subordinated to the supposed greater good of Scientology and its mission. Any attempt to prioritize one's own well-being outside of this structure is framed as selfish or misguided, making it easier for the church to demand sacrifices of time, money, and loyalty. The dynamics also reflect a reductionist view of human motivation. For example, the fourth dynamic, mankind, and the sixth dynamic, the physical universe, are framed as survival urges that are purely functional rather than meaningful. Hubbard writes, "The physical universe itself is there to be controlled. The higher a being's awareness, the greater their control over it." This oversimplifies the complex relationship between humanity and the environment, recasting stewardship or interconnectedness as domination. This perspective conveniently reinforces the Church's narrative that individuals can gain greater control over life and the universe by advancing through Scientology's levels. In reality, Hubbard offers no concrete mechanisms for achieving this supposed mastery, leaving individuals trapped in a cycle of paying for courses and auditing sessions in the hope of one day achieving these lofty but ill-defined goals. Ultimately, the dynamics of life is neither a profound roadmap to understanding human motivation nor a practical guide to achieving balance in life. Hubbard borrows heavily from earlier systems like Aristotle's philosophy and Maslow's hierarchy, but strips away their complexity and insight, reducing them to a rigid, survival-focused framework that prioritizes Scientology above all else. The higher dynamics are so abstract as to be meaningless without Scientology's interpretations, while the lower ones subtly subjugate individual autonomy to group loyalty. The book's claim to universality is undermined by its transparent goal, to make readers feel dependent on Scientology as the only path to mastering life's complexities. It is less a genuine exploration of life's dynamics and more a carefully constructed tool for recruitment and control.